believe it or not, you can actually play Cyberpunk 2077 on your phones. But as you could imagine, it wouldn't really worth the dime because you need some sort of a super phone for that. Fortunately, there are actually tons of alternatives for that specifically, and today we're going to be looking at some of our best bets of 2022 and the past few years, however, to pick up and play that are pretty much inspired by Cyberpunk 2077 or inspired of it. Let's go. At number 1, we've got here something called Cyberika. Well, technically from last year, this is an action-adventure MMORPG with a pretty deep storyline and will technically sit in the Cyberpunk universe. The game's heavily inspired by 2077 and also another game called Game Deck, which is a top-down, detective-style, story-driven. This one, however, offers a pretty well-inclined control system, a really good look for a mobile game. It's not a really easy-to-play game, it's pretty challenging in fact, but when it comes to replay value, this is to be one of the best Cyberpunk style games ever made for any platform. Check it out just in case you missed it. Punishing Gray Raven, on the other hand, which is technically speaking a AAA when it comes to just the gaming world as a whole experience, not just the mobile devices, well, technically has been around since July last year and it's downloaded over 1 million times with a very good review score as well. Frankly, just 1 million times only because not just any phone could handle the graphics, or maybe that's just what I've been led to believe. This is an action RPG at its heart and set in a cyberpunk universe, and a lot in the same vein of old Nier games, hence the resemblance. Check it out, the game will take you down for 2 GB of space. Next up at number 3, we've got another thing here called Hyperforma. First of all, I'd have to say this is just one of the greatest mobile games ever made, regardless of the genre. The graphics, storyline, the engaging and challenging gameplay itself, there is literally zero things wrong with this game. Now, I don't know if any of you here knows about a game called Break Breaker, but it's kind of exactly that, except it's just 10 times better. The music in the game is just on a whole other level, the game's free for some reason, and it's sitting on the Play Store with a very good review score as well. Do make sure to check this one out. Coming up behind that, we have, well, first off, this has been in the making since 2020, something called Punk Royale 2052. An open world, possibly MMORPG, cyberpunk-inspired project that has only went so far on the way a single beta earlier this year, and apparently they were using some sort of a new engine for a mobile game, and supposedly that is why the game isn't already out yet. Just take a quick look, the game's set to be coming out by the end of this year and for PCs and mobile devices as well. At number 5, this is our honorable mention today. It's the old Cyber Hunter, a battle royale, technically Fortnite or R6 Siege inspired first-person shooter, but one with cyberpunk style elements. Technically, you get to fight off against an army of computers or, well, AI soldiers. This game, I believe, offers one of the most beautiful worlds for a mobile first-person shooter. It provides an insane variety of items and gadgets for this type of game. The controls are good, online servers of which are great, and you can even play the game through different mods for extended replay value. Check it out, just in case you missed it.
The dead cannot cry out for justice. It's a duty of the living to do so for them.
Moving on, we have Cyber Fighters. Now, this is another free-to-play stickman-style game, and one that is actually just cyberpunk themed with elements of even role-playing games. The game is totally playable offline. It's a very easy to master and quite fun to play and kill time with sort of game. It even has a story mode for a bit of a kick. It then also has daily quests for more levels, characters, weapons, and in-game items. Just check it out. Game's been around for 2 years. It'll take you less than 100 megabytes of space, and it's literally bug-free.
非常に聞きにくいことでござるな。
7 up, we have Overdrive 2. Now, for the first, this is a hack and slash platformer, and it tells a story of the world about 100 years into the future, and on the certain version of apocalypse where robots and cyborgs are actually in aid with whatever's left of the humankind against this corrupted AI, or just technically trying to take over the whole world. This game is, once again, totally playable offline. It has a ton of upgrade and unlockables to just dig into. It's gotta be one of the smoothest games I've personally played on the mobile platforms, all of it for free and with a very, very dark cyberpunk inspired aesthetic. Check it out in case you're new to it. Cyberworld Online, on the other hand, is an open-world multiplayer role-playing game only set in a futuristic world in which you get to explore the streets of this huge city, and it's kind of a sim-based game. Like, you technically get to dive into the atmosphere of this certain genre. The game's quite good. It offers this 8 versus 8 online player with a very good graphic. It's got a great pool of weapons and vehicles to go through and choose from, and the customization options possibilities in this game is just insane. Check it out. This one's also free. Coming up behind that, probably not the best game to pick up and just play right now, but nonetheless, from all the way back in 2014, we have here something called EXILES. This is a third and first person cyberpunk style shooter where you basically must become one of the members of this elite group and eventually save the world. This game's not free. It'll take you down for $7. It's actually not bad for a mobile game. I would say unless you're a die-hard fan, you just might want to avoid this one. But here. At number 10, we have here something called Battle Knight Cyberpunk RPG. Now, frankly, I do try to squeeze an idle game in most of my lists when I get a chance, but this one is perhaps actually one of the best idle games to date. First off, the graphics are pretty legit for an idle game, the characters of which, lore, and the replay value is pretty on point. Now, obviously it's a pay to win to an extent, like you start pretty fast, but then as you go, it'll get slower to level up, but for a game to just spend 10 to 15 minutes a day for, it is legitimately good. Moving on, we have something else called Mindcell. This is an old school style third-person shooter in which you play as this dude in the future that has been material for some specific scientific experiments. Therefore, your mission is to just basically destroy everything and eventually get to figure out why this thing was a thing. Check it out. Game's actually got a decent story. It is not free though. It costs you about $5. Graphically, I would say it still holds up since a couple years ago, and it plays pretty smooth as well, with or without a controller. Alright guys, at number 12, and as in the case of Battle Knight, the game a couple games prior, I actually do try to sneak one of these games as well in a list once I get a chance. Cause if you're a Stickman style platformer stuff, we've got here something from earlier May this year, something called Undestroyed Shadow ARPG. This is a pretty unique game though, where you get to slash enemies with melee or ranged weapons. You get to go through some slick gameplay, as it is the case with all Stickman games, a ton of weapons, stages, bosses, and a pretty good replay value as well.
Welcome, Agent. Enjoy your trip to the middle of nowhere?
Moving on, we have us here a little bit of a nostalgia, so you might want to go and skip this one if you never had to go through the old Blade Runner detective noir game, because it's exactly that, except it puts you in the shoes of a cybergenetically augmented female agent, and it's a pretty classic pixel art game, as you can see. This is also not a free-to-play game either. It takes about $4. It's been around for a few years now, and I can tell you this with utmost certainty, the game has a great story, some really good atmosphere for a retro-inspired game, and a pretty good review score as well.
What is a god, if not one who has reign over life and death?
My God. I think this case just got a lot more complicated.
And number 14, and made by the pretty well-known shooting game developers Crescent Moon Games, and although this is one specifically for me a so-so kind of game, but nonetheless, this is called Neon Shadow. Actually a pretty popular first-person shooter among the rest, mainly because it features a very beautiful cyberpunk world and atmosphere, but one that isn't really easy to get the hang of. In fact, the controls aren't really that good or the best, but the graphics are pretty cool and the storyline is actually good. Game's free, and it has a few occasional ads. And last but not least, technically awards from its developers, we have an upcoming game, although it's been already released for PCs a couple of months ago, but in case you are new to, an action-adventure role-playing game or platformer, something called ANNO Mutationem. This is a mix of pixelated 2D, 3D style graphics set in a distant future and pretty much inspired by Cyberpunk, and I would say whether you're a fan of 2D or 3D pixel art games with some awesome synth music, good combat and a decent story on top, this is definitely one to keep in mind. The game's set to be released by the end of this year.